was doing research in marine sciences. But after I arrived to the NSF and I started learning about the different kinds of programs, I started realizing that my impact could be wider because I would be working at the national level. And first, by doing research, I was more narrowly focused. And I realized that also by working at the National Science Foundation, that gave me an opportunity to make a difference in people's lives. And so I found that very rewarding. The Embassy Science Fellow is a program that is partially funded by the U.S. State Department and also by my organization. And the embassy, the U.S. Embassy here, coordinates with MITE and with other government organizations about my involvement here, the activities that I'm going to be conducting, and setting up the schedule and figuring out how best I can work here with different Malaysian organizations to strengthen the U.S. and Malaysian relationships, mostly through science diplomacy. Science diplomacy, actually, last year when Dr. Rita Colwell, who was the U.S. Science Envoy, came, she talked about science diplomacy. That means that science has no borders, and a way to strengthen relationship between countries is through science, because when you do science, it doesn't matter where you are and which geographic region or which country you belong to, you're discovering things that are of interest, of mutual interest to people. So the science diplomacy means you have collaborations between scientists in different countries, and that kind of makes it better collaboration and mutual relationship between countries. Well, it really is up to the Malaysian scientists. I see that there is a lot of potential in many different areas, but it is really up to the different organizations or researchers at different universities to decide what the priorities should be. The country needs to decide and set up their own priorities as to what areas that will be more important for the country as well. One of the areas that I'm involved here that MITE and the embassy thought it would be important is STEM education, because you cannot improve research, or you cannot develop a country, or you cannot move forward with sciences if you're not preparing the future scientists, and that has to start somewhere. And so it has to start from the young people, the new generation that eventually will be the scientists of tomorrow. So that's some of the efforts have to be put in at that level to start developing scientists at a very early age and start basically preparing young people to start thinking like scientists when they're young. If you value that science is a contributor to the progress of a country and the betterment of people's lives, then investment would be worthwhile. So I think it's even on the personal side, you invest in what you value and you spend time and money into something that for you is of value. So if a country values science as a contributor to their own development and improvement of people's lives, of course, yes, it would be a good thing to do. Yeah. When you look at what science, it's hard. Because I was trained as a scientist, but it's hard to not see it, for me anyhow. Science is everywhere. Everything you have around is the product of a scientific discovery. We take that for granted, even remote control or cell phone or any piece of equipment, what you have in your hands, it's a product of a scientific discovery. And you wouldn't have it if there were not years of research that led to that product. Well, I think every country has the same issues, is facing the same issues. I just returned from a meeting in Jakarta that was for this Southeast Asian countries, and I learned that the issue of sciences and science teaching and learning is more or less not restricted to one particular region or country. It's something more universal. It's something that a lot of countries are facing. Like most countries are facing issues of how you teach science, how you get students interested, involved in sciences, how you get them to really learn the basics and see get the fundamental issues of sciences. And a lot of it has to do with how you do it, how you train. You have to train the teachers first, how to teach sciences. And that I see Malaysia is already involved in some of this inquiry-based learning, place-based learning. That is a methodology that seems to get the students more involved and more engaged, what we call the hands-on science.
Hands-on science.
Yeah, and that is one of the ways. It might not be the only way. There are other countries that have other experiences. I know France has a very well program called La Man and La Pat, which means pretty much the same thing, hands-on science, and involves scientists with elementary school children. I have worked at the National Science Foundation in a program that we call GK-12, which is the program that brings graduate students to the K-12 classroom, connects the graduate students with the young people, and the graduate students in the sciences serve as role models. They bring their own research to the classroom. They work with the teachers and they work with the young students to get them involved in scientific research and scientific methodology. And that's one of the ways that might work here if there was some interest in developing that kind of program. It's not only one approach that works. You can try different things and modify the different approaches to fit the particular area. Even in the U.S., we have had with this program that I worked with. Some things work in rural areas, some things work in urban areas, something work in big schools, and other things work in smaller schools. That you can use the technology in some places, but in other places technology is not available. So you have to work with your own reality, your own resources, and your own setting, because some things are different, and you have to adapt to your own realities and your own environment. There might be a decline in other fields. For example, I know that in the natural sciences, for example, in the U.S. at least, we have seen that there is a decline in the environmental sciences, because the children are spending too much time indoors. They're not going outside, so we see a decline in students going into the areas of environmental sciences, ecology. They are losing contact with nature. So there is that balance that you have to have. On one hand, it's great that the young people are using technology, but maybe too much. And then they're not going outdoors, they're not seeing the real world outdoors. So that is one of those balances that need to be taken into account. And it has to involve also the parents, it has to involve the teachers, the community. It's not a simple issue. The way you expose people to things. Sometimes people don't know what science is all about, or what engineering is all about. We funded, for example, a project in robotics, and had a lot of kids involved in making robots. And then they start thinking, I could be an engineer. I could start building things. I didn't know that you can make a living doing that. So you have to expose them to it. And then once they find out that, wow, this is an exciting way of making a living, then you can do it. But you won't find out until you try. And it's a lot of it is exposing people, letting them know what the opportunities are in science. I know that many scientific societies are trying to do a little bit more public relationship and explaining to people what it is that certain scientists do. Mathematicians, there are a lot of people who don't know what mathematicians do, how they spend their time, and what kinds of things they can do to make a living, what areas they can find jobs. Same thing about scientists. And so there are different ways, and there are different ways of also being a scientist and contribute. You can be a pure researcher, you can be an applied researcher, you can be an entrepreneur, you can work in different areas, so the possibilities are very wide. Three things. One is the curriculum, depending on how the curriculum is decided. Second one is about teacher training, how the teachers are trained to teach. And third one is evaluation or assessment. How do you decide if the students have learned? And so when you put those three things together, you get an entire package. But you cannot just use one or the other. You need to look at the three things together. What drives me is again, there is no day alike. Every day is a new day, and what motivates me is just the idea that I get a lot of rewards, but in a different way. It's not by publishing another paper. It's mostly by I get an email every now and then from people who I have funded many years before, and they said, "Oh, look, I won an award," or I get a lot of emails from my current grantees who get other opportunities. I just got one of my grantees who said, "I got a feature in the New York Times." Things like that. Yes, he's just doing great research using robots actually as tutors. And that story was published in the New York Times. And so it's those things that you feel like you can actually make the difference in somebody else's life.